Hello everyone, we're going to be trying something a little bit different today. I'm going to try to get all teched out here, see what we can come up with. But we are looking into the Wacky on Westport. I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way. I've got several more explorations planned for that area. And let's get started. Westport is a historic neighborhood and a main entertainment district in Kansas City, Missouri. In the early 19th century, Westport was settled by a group led by American pioneer and tribal missionary Reverend Isaac McCoy, who brought his son John Calvin McCoy as a surveyor and his son-in-law Reverend Johnston Litkins, who bought the land. To compete with independence to the east and with veteran pioneering trader Francisque Shoutout to the north. We've ran into that name before and I can never say it, or I'm unsure if I'm saying it correctly. There's a Chateau or Shoto traffic way. John McCoy forged a road from Westport 4 miles north to a Missouri River landing rock next to Shoto's Landing. McCoy's Westport Landing soon combined in the 1830s with Shoto's town atop the levee bluff to form the settlement called Kansas. That was incorporated as the city of Kansas, which allied with the shared origin of Westport and boomed. Westport became a gateway to the westward expansion trails through Kansas territory and for the ruffians into Bleeding Kansas. It suffered the American Civil War Battle of Westport in October 1864, and wagon trails became obsolete to distant railroads, so Westport declined to rural town status. The city of Kansas became Kansas City in 1889, which annexed Westport in 1897. Historical sites includes Kelly's Westport Inn, the oldest surviving building in Kansas City. The oldest surviving building in Kansas City. Wow, that is quite the claim. And I've been in Kelly's Westport Inn, as it's a bar, and most of Westport is a entertainment district, as they mentioned, and that's a new one to me. I had like a less than 2-minute video that I did a while back of this alleged wagon trail replica sitting atop ruins. But, the main thing being, as usual, we're looking at the narrative and we're going to use our own eyes. That's where the boots on the ground comes in. We see it all with our own eyes. And then we make the decision how built out the area is, the population, etc., if any of it makes any sense whatsoever. Alright, I'm just going to start this whole sentence over. John McCoy was a degreed surveyor by trade and platted Westport, buying the parcel from his brother-in-law and fellow missionary, Johnston Litkins. Johnston Litkins was an American Baptist missionary, pioneer, and politician, and then formally incorporated in February 1857. He is generally considered the father of Kansas City. He ordered supplies to be landed at the Rocky Point on the Missouri River between Grand and Main Streets, which became known as Westport's Landing. When the landing became popular enough to attract businesses from the next landing at Independence, 14 pioneering investors, including John McCoy, formed the Town of Kansas Company to buy the land, including Westport's Landing. Parcels from Johnston Litkins and parcels from Gabriel Prudhomme. Westport's trade with the native tribes extended to the Great Plains and Rocky Mountains. By 1850, the combined settlements of Westport and Kansas surpassed Independence' role as an outfitting and starting point for traders, trappers, and immigrants heading west on the Santa Fe and Oregon trails. Westport's greatest prosperity came between 1854 and 1860. The Civil War brought many skirmishes between pro and anti slavery groups in the area, and the Battle of Westport was in October 1864. After the wars, trade fell off sharply and never recovered, and by 1899, Kansas City annexed Westport. Here's a little map of the area at the time of Fremont's 1842 expedition. Not really much of a map here. Guess we're to assume that there is nothing going on anywhere around here other than in Westport. Yes. And then we get to the cholera pandemic. You know, I feel like I've done this Wacky before. I tried to look for it, and I'm not sure. Maybe maybe it's deja vu, maybe all of these ridiculous narratives are kind of just, blending together. We are going to continue. The cholera pandemic of 1849 had deleted half of the populations of each of the two area boomtowns of Westport and Kansas, totaling thousands. This filled each of their sole cemeteries, prompting the search for one new cemetery site halfway between to unify both communities for all time. On November 9th, 1857, while the newly incorporated city of Kansas, renamed from the town of Kansas, had a population of about 4,000, Union Cemetery was opened. It is the oldest surviving cemetery in what became Kansas City, Missouri. And that's why this sounds familiar, because basically they've taken this cholera pandemic paragraph here and copy and pasted it to several different narratives, including the narrative about the Union Cemetery, which we did a boots on the ground and a wacky about. And it is a cold, wet, windy day here in Kansas City once again. I had to take a little mental break before my brain completely turned to mush. It's well on its way. Miss Betsy here. She could give 2 cares less about his story. The historic Nutterville area east of Broadway Street was developed by James B. Nutter Sr., who ensured that its old homes were restored by being adapted as business offices. The houses are colorfully painted and landscaped, and we are going to be visiting this street once we get to that particular area in Westport. But we're kind of gonna, we started on the west side, we're gonna work our way east and go from there. I neglected to look at the McCoys here, so we're going to check them out. Isaac McCoy was an American pioneer and Baptist missionary among the Native Americans in what became the states of Indiana, Michigan, Missouri, and Kansas. John Calvin McCoy was an American land surveyor, missionary, and entrepreneur. He is considered the father of Kansas City. And since, our main focus on this channel is Kansas City, we would be stupid not to look into the father of Kansas City. McCoy was born in Vincennes, Indiana on September 28th, 1811. I probably butchered that word. I've never heard of this place. I've never heard it mentioned or spoken, so occasionally I get things wrong. But wow, what is going on here? He studied as a land surveyor at Transylvania College in Lexington, Kentucky during 1826 and 1827. He accompanied his parents, Isaac and Christina Polk McCoy, to Kansas City to perform Baptist missionary work in 1830. After Isaac's expiration in 1846, John and Christina moved back to Jackson County, where he continued his business ventures. Christina expired in 1850. A stream in Elkhart County, Indiana, and a lake in Cass County, Michigan, are named after her. In 1833, John McCoy built a two-story cabin at what became 444 Westport Road on the northeast corner of Pennsylvania Avenue. He opened a store for travelers on the Santa Fe and Oregon trails. He named the area Westport because it was the last settlement before travelers ventured into the territory of Kansas. McCoy's store was 4 miles from the Missouri River in the hills away from the floodplain. Oh wow, we finally got one sensible person here that built something away from the floodplain. He established a dock at a rocky point in the river between Main and Grand Street, which became called Westport Landing, and we've already gone through that. As usual, a bunch of repeated information. The natural wharf became quite popular, but the land surrounding it belonged to farmer Gabriel Prudhomme. Mr. Prudhomme again. And all we get when we scroll over Mr. Gabriel Prudhomme here is a definition of what Kansas City, Missouri is, I guess. After Prudhomme was deleted in 1831, his property was auctioned in 1838 to settle the estate. How convenient that he was deleted, and then his property was auctioned. 14 people, including McCoy, bought the property by forming the Town of Kansas Company. Here we are. This man is removed from existence, and then these 14 people that they keep alluding to, including the McCoys, purchased the property. And it goes on, we platted all this land out. Due to his sympathies with the Confederate States of America during the American Civil War, he was required to leave Kansas City by General Number 11. Oh, well, have we got the General Number 11 again? Yes, we do. The depopulation order. His son Spencer enlisted in the Confederate Army and was deleted in June 1863. A Kansas City Public Library historian said McCoy single-handedly had the greatest effect on the development of early Kansas City. He founded Westport and is widely regarded as the father of Kansas City. Pioneer Park is at Westport and Broadway, with a sculpture by Thomas L. Beard of Alexander Majors, John McCoy, and Jim Bridger. Calvin was one of the founders of the Old Settlers Historical Society, founded in 1871. His daughter, Eleanor Nellie McCoy Harris, was known as one of Kansas City's first historians and writers. Alexander Majors was an American businessman who, along with William Hepburn Russell and William B. Waddell, founded the Pony Express, based in St. Joseph, Missouri. This was one of the westwardmost points east of the Missouri River from its upper portion beyond that state. James Felix Bridger was an American mountain man, trapper, Army scout, and wilderness guide who explored and trapped in the western United States in the first half of the 19th century. He was known as an Old Gabe in his later years. He was from the Bridger family of Virginia. Here's the sculpture that they were referring to. I'm not sure which one is Majors or McCoy here. One of them sporting a top hat. And I think that the mountain man is pretty self-explanatory. There's a new word to me in here that I need to investigate. Wharf. A level quayside area to which a ship may be moored to load and unload. So basically another word for a pier, dock, etc. Got one more interesting thing I want to go over here, then I think I'm going to wrap this up. This one was kind of an experiment as far as going back and forth with the camera, a little more editing involved. So I'm not sure I'll be doing this often. I was trying to set it up to where, you got me in the little box in the corner. And I'm not really sure anybody is really interested in looking at me anyways, but thought I'd try something different and let me know what you guys think. I don't know. I wanted to mix it up some, but I wanted to give you a quick view of this Nutterville. And the term Nutterville is new to me. I'm very aware of this street with these insanely colored homes in Westport. We probably won't spend a ton of time once we get to these, but they're kind of fun to look at. This one here, not sure why it's not very colorful, not very inclusive. That's all we get of this Nutterville. It's pathetic. And as usual, it's like pulling teeth trying to get an image. I can remember not that terribly long ago, this was not an issue. Of course, some old documentation of these homes so that people can forever be taxed even if they own their home. One more interesting thing I'd like to show you before I blow this popsicle stand. And what brought this to my attention was this panoramic drawing showing Westport in the 1850s. Looking pretty scarce other than the convoys upon convoys of wagons. What's going on with this one? It's like a giant wagon with a sail. This guy's pointing at it. He's like, what in the hell? Very bizarre. But we've got a 2-minute read here. Let's see if we can make it through. Gary Jenkins has always been interested in the trails that ran through town before Kansas City was even on the map. He volunteers on camping trips with teenagers from Kansas State School for the Blind along the Oregon Trail. And near his home at 44th Street and State Line Road in Kansas City, Missouri, a sign denotes the crossing of the Oregon and California trails. His fascination with these early interstates led him to hypothesize that Westport Road might have been part of the trails at one time, given its meandering path. He got to wondering if Westport Road served as a magnet for people and businesses, just like suburban roads of today, such as Nolan Road in Independence and Metcalf Avenue in Overland Park. Jenkins asked curious Casey how the city developed along the early trails, and we found that Westport truly was the gateway to the West. But reaching Independence required a treacherous trip up the Blue River, and once you arrived, the landing was small. So by the 1840s, Westport Landing emerged as the new hopping off point for Western settlers. One benefit of Westport is that it was 12 miles downriver from Independence, shaving off a little bit of the land journey to the west. This spot eventually became the embarkation point for the Santa Fe, Oregon, and California trails. So what did they do? Like just load up their wagons on a ferry or something and then float down the river? From this landing, people could travel a few miles south to Westport, which boomed as a commercial center for both settlers and Indians, who had received funding from the Indian Removal Act. The town's population peaked at about 2,000 people in the late 1850s. As Jenkins noted, most Kansas City streets run north, south, or east-west, but Westport Road is different. It runs at nearly a perfect diagonal between Main Street and Southwest Trafficway. The cross streets are set at diagonals and curve unusually as well. And I'm sure that they curve with unusual precision. This is probably because the heart of the town originally was located at Westport Road and Pennsylvania, where John McCoy, its founder, built its original inn in 1831 and platted the town in 1835. From this hub, the town is thought to have developed along a small stream that ran through the city. Wonder if this, small stream that they're referring to is the Brush Creek, or what they call the Brush Creek. And by the way, we're going to be looking at some more sections of the Brush Creek. Hopefully this winter, once everything dies, we can get a better view of a few interesting areas. It's my opinion or theory that part of it actually runs underground for a while down the middle of Ward Parkway, but we shall see. It wasn't until after the Civil War that Kansas City, also platted by McCoy, became the larger city. Westport began to decline and was annexed into Kansas City in 1899. Just a little bit more information here, and I thought I would share it with you. Dude, I almost forgot. I wanted to show you guys this little slider that they had down here at the bottom. One side we're seeing 1890 and the other side 1947. And allegedly this is the same street. Westport Road looking west. And as usual, you know, in the 1800s, we are always just seeing muddy streets. Not sure if I can get you in here. That's a little better. And who's to say that both of these photos are from the same point of view exactly? Who's to say these are the same streets? Is this building? Not seeing the building on the right there. I'm not really sure. I mean, to me, you know, they're trying to show you just how primitive everything looked in the 1890s, or the fake teen 90s. And then here we are, just a little over 50 years later. And we went from dirt to paving everything with bricks. And then, you know, that wasn't good enough. So we went ahead and paved over the bricks with what looks like an asphalt here. Of course, not holding up very well. But look at these bricks and rails. These, I don't know. Let's say they put these rails in the brick paved streets in the 1920s. Should it be looking like this 27 years later? I don't think so. I think there's a manipulation going on here. On a more positive note, I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that my distractions have paid off once again. If you remember, I ran across this word polychrome brickwork. I believe it was in my Wacky storybook architecture, but one of my followers, and I am also a follower of his, by the way, he was unaware of this chocolate factory in France until he saw that, and he actually sought it out and got some boots on the ground footage of it that's pretty awesome. If you guys aren't aware of Red Brick 93, go check him out. He's got some awesome stuff in France. It's great to get a view from various parts of the realm. Alright guys, I think that's going to do it for the Wacky Westport. I hope everybody enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one.